The Russian Navy, tr. Voyenno-morskoy Flot Rossiyskoy Federatsii, lit. Military-Maritime Fleet of the Russian Federation, is the naval arm of the Russian military. The present Russian Navy was formed in January 1992, succeeding the Navy of the Commonwealth of Independent States, which had itself succeeded the Soviet Navy following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in December 1991. The regular Russian Navy was established by Peter the Great in October 1696. Ascribed to Peter I is the oft-quoted statement, "A ruler that has but an army has one hand, but he who has a navy has both." The symbols of the Russian Navy, the St. Andrew's flag and ensign, and most of his traditions were established personally by Peter I. Neither Jane's fighting ships nor the International Institute for Strategic Studies list any standard ship prefix for the vessels of the Russian Navy. For official U.S. Navy photographs, they are sometimes referred to as RFS, a Euro-Russian Federation ship. However, the Russian Navy does not use this convention for itself. The Russian Navy possesses the vast majority of the former Soviet naval forces, and currently comprises the Northern Fleet, the Russian Pacific Fleet, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, the Russian Baltic Fleet, the Russian Caspian Flotilla, naval aviation, and the coastal troops. A recently approved rearmament program has placed the development of the Navy on an equal footing with the strategic nuclear forces for the first time in Soviet and Russian history. The program, covering the period until 2015, is expected to see the replacement of 45% of the inventory of the Russian Navy. Out of 4.9 trillion rubles allocated for military rearmament, 25% will go into building new ships. "We are already building practically as many ships as we did in Soviet times," First Deputy Prime Minister Sergei Ivanov said during a visit to Severodvinsk in July 2007, "The problem now is not lack of money, but how to optimize production so that the Navy can get new ships 3, not 5, years after laying them down." The Russian Navy suffered severely since the dissolution of the Soviet Union due to insufficient maintenance, lack of funding and subsequent effects on the training of personnel and timely replacement of equipment. Another setback is attributed to Russia's domestic shipbuilding industry, which is reported to have been in decline as to their capabilities of constructing contemporary hardware efficiently. Some analysts even say that because of this, Russia's naval capabilities have been facing a slow but certain irreversible collapse. Some analysts say that the recent rise in gas and oil prices has enabled a sort of renaissance of the Russian Navy due to increased available funds, which may allow Russia to begin developing the capacity to modernize. In August 2014, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that Russian naval capabilities would be bolstered with new weapons and equipment within the next 6 years in response to NATO deployments in Eastern Europe and recent developments in Ukraine. Origins. The origins of the Russian Navy may be traced to the period between the 4th and the 6th century. The first Slavic flotillas consisted of small sailing ships and rowboats, which had been seaworthy and able to navigate in riverbeds. During the 9th through 12th centuries, there were flotillas in the Kievan Rus consisting of hundreds of vessels with 1, 2, or 3 masts. The citizens of Novgorod are known to have conducted military campaigns in the Baltic Sea, although contemporary Scandinavian sources state that the fleet was from Karelia or Estonia. Lada Yar was a typical boat used by the army of Novgorod. There were also smaller sailboats and rowboats, such as Ushkis for sailing in rivers, lakes and skerries, kochis, and nosads, used for cargo transportation. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the Cossacks conducted military campaigns against the Crimean Khanate and Ottoman Empire, using sailboats and rowboats. The Don Cossacks called them strugs. These boats were capable of transporting up to 80 men. The Cossack flotillas numbered 80 to 100 boats. The centralized Russian state had been fighting for its own access to the Baltic Sea, Black Sea and Sea of Azov since the 17th century. By the end of that century, the Russians had accumulated some valuable experience in using riverboats together with land forces. Under Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich, the construction of the first 3-masted ship to be built entirely within Russia was finished in 1636. She was built in Ballorkina by Danish shipbuilders from Holstein with a European design. She was christened the Frederick Indiana, 1667-69. The Russians tried to build naval ships in a village of Didinovo on the shores of the Oka River for the purpose of defending the trade routes along the Volga River, which led to the Caspian Sea. In 1668, they built a 26-gun ship, the Oriol, a yacht, a boat with a mast and bowsprit, and a few rowboats. During much of the 17th century, Russian merchants and Cossacks, using Koch boats, sailed across the White Sea, exploring the rivers Lena, Kolyma and Indigirka, and founding settlements in the region of the Upper Amur. Unquestionably the most celebrated Russian explorer was Simeon Dezhnev, who, in 1648, sailed the entire length of present-day Russia along the Arctic coast. Rounding the Chukotka Peninsula, Dezhnev passed through the Bering Sea and sailed into the Pacific Ocean. Imperial Russian Navy. The regular Russian Navy was created at the initiative of Peter the Great. During the Second Atsev campaign of 1696 against Ottoman Empire, the Russians employed for the first time 2 warships, 4 fireships, 23 galleys and 1,300 strugs, built on the Voronezh River. After the Atsev fortress was taken, at Peter I's request the Boyar Duma understood the vital importance of a navy for successful warfare and passed a decree on commencing the construction of a regular navy on October 20, 1696. This date is considered the official birthday of the regular Russian Navy. Early on in his reign, Peter made a tour to Western Europe, England, and Holland. In Holland, he became acquainted with the work of the mathematicians Hans Gouda, Dirk Raven, and Hansis Brandsen Huygensort, which sparked his enthusiasm for the value of mathematics. A major result of this tour was the hiring of large numbers of foreign specialists of various expertise, including mathematicians. Among those hired was Henry Farquharson, called in Russia Andrei Danilovich Farquharson or Fovarson, who had taught mathematics and astronomy at the University of Aberdeen and was recommended by Halley and Jacob Daniel Bruce, while John Coulson was hired to teach Bruce mathematics. Farquharson's unregistered trademark's task in Russia was to create and administer a school of mathematics and navigation. It was under Farquharson's unregistered trademark's guidance that he and Tsar Peter wrote the mathematics curriculum for the new school. He was accompanied by Stephen Gwynn and Richard Grice, who were graduates of the Englander unregistered trademark's Royal Mathematical School. In 1700 at Voronezh the first major ships launched for the fledgling Russian Navy, for use with the Atsev fleet were the 58-gun Goto Predestinatsia, the 80-gun Stary Orel, and the 70-gun Stary Dub. During the Great Northern War of 1700 to 1721, the Russians built the Baltic Fleet and the city of St. Petersburg. In 1703 to 1723, the main base of the Baltic Fleet was located in St. Petersburg and then in Kronstadt. Other bases were later established in Vyborg, Helsingfors, Revel and Abo. At first, Vladimir Skuprikas was in charge of shipbuilding. Later on, these functions were transferred to the Russian Admiralty. Basic principles of the Russian Navy, its educational and training methods, as well as methods for conducting military action were all summarized in the Naval Regulations, Fuith 3/4 n euro nth 3/4 th to the first n florin n nth degree th squared. Peter the Great, Fyodor Apraksin, Alexei Senaevin, Naum Senaevin, Mikhail Golitsyn are generally credited for the development of the Russian art of naval warfare. Main principles of naval warfare were further developed by Grigory Spiridov, Fyodor Ushakov, and Dmitry Senaevin. The Russo-Turkish Wars of Catherine the Great resulted in the establishment of the Black Sea Fleet, with its bases in Sevastopol and Kherson. It was at the time that Russian warships started to venture into the Mediterranean on a regular basis. In 1770, Grigory Spiridov unregistered trademark S squadron gained supremacy in the Aegean Sea by destroying the Turkish fleet in the Battle of Chesma. After having advanced to the Danube, the Russians formed the Danube military flotilla for the purpose of guarding the Danube estuary from the Turks, and they came in 1771 as guests to Dubrovnik in the Republic of Ragusa. The beluga caviar from the Danube was famous, and the merchants from the Republic of Ragusa dominated the import-export business in Serbia with the Habsburg monarchy. The Russian Navy captured in 1782 British cargo vessels. Their cargo were hemp and iron. The Republic of Ragusa became one of the chief carriers of the Mediterranean in 1783 with the help of the USA, when Britain acknowledges the United States' independence, although the Americans agreed to allow Dubrovnik's ships free passage in their ports. During the Mediterranean expedition of 1799, Fyodor Ushakov single-handedly carved out the Greek Republic of 7 islands, proceeding to clear from the French Corfu and all the Ionian Islands. His squadron then blocked the French bases in Italy, notably Genoa and Ancona, and successfully assaulted Naples and Rome. Ushakov, proclaimed a patron saint of the Russian Navy in the 21st century, was succeeded in command by Dmitry Senyavin, who reasserted Russian control of the southern Adriatic, disrupted Dubrovnik's sea trade, and destroyed the Ottoman fleet in the Battle of Athos. Between 1803 and 1855, Russian sailors undertook over 40 circumnavigations and distant voyages, which played an important role in exploration of the Far East and culminated in Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen's discovery of Antarctica. Notwithstanding these triumphs, Russia's unregistered trademark's slow technical and economic development in the first half of the 19th century caused her to fall behind other world powers in the field of steamboat construction. It was in 1826 that the Russians built their first armed steamboat Itsura. At the outbreak of the Crimean War in 1853, steamships were few and sailing ships heavily predominated. The Battle of Sinope, won by Pavel Nakhimov, is remembered in history as the last significant naval battle involving sailing ships. During the siege of Sevastopol in 1854–1855, Russian sailors set an example of using all means possible for defending their base from land and sea. Although the Russians introduced modern naval mining in the Baltic and repelled the siege of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatka in the Pacific, Sevastopol was finally surrendered on honorable terms, but only after the Russians sank their ships to prevent outside use of the harbor. In accordance with the Treaty of Paris, Russia lost its right to have a military fleet in the Black Sea. As a consequence, the Russian sailing fleet lost its significance and was rapidly replaced by steamboats, including the first steel-armored gunship Apite and one of the first seafaring ironclads Pyotr. On January 16, 1877, Admiral Stepan Makarov became the first to launch torpedoes from a boat in combat. He also proposed the idea and oversaw the construction of the world's first ocean-going icebreaker Yermak, commanding it in 2 Arctic expeditions in 1899 and 1901. At about the same time, Alexei Krylov elaborated the modern floodability theory. The Russian Navy was considered the 3rd strongest in the world on the eve of the Russo-Japanese War, which turned to be a catastrophe for the Russian military in general and the Russian Navy in particular. Although neither party lacked courage, the Russians were defeated by the Japanese in the Battle of Port Arthur, which was the first time in warfare that mines were used for offensive purposes. The warships of the Baltic Fleet sent to the Far East were lost in the Battle of Tsushima. Soon after the war, Russia devoted a significant portion of its military spending to an ambitious shipbuilding program aimed at replacing lost warships with modern dreadnoughts. During World War I, the fleets played a limited role in the Eastern Front, due to heavy defensive and offensive mining on both sides. Characteristically, the Black Sea Fleet succeeded in mining the Bosporus, thus preventing the Ottoman fleet from entering the Black Sea. After the revolution forced Russia to quit the war, the Baltic Fleet was evacuated from Helsinki and Tallinn to Kronstadt during the ice cruise of the Baltic Fleet, and many of the ships of the Black Sea Fleet found their last refuge in Bizerte. Soviet Navy. For the most part, Russian sailors welcomed the Russian Revolution of 1917, in which they participated. Earlier, in 1905, sailors of the Imperial Russian battleship Potemkin in the Black Sea Navy revolted. In 1906, rebellious soldiers gained control of some Helsinki coastal fortifications during events known as the Viapuri Rebellion, which was subsequently put down, following bombardments from ships of the Baltic Fleet which remained loyal to the Tsarist government. The first ship of the Soviet Navy could be considered to be the rebellious Imperial Russian cruiser Avrora, whose blank shot from its forecastle gun signaled the October Revolution according to Soviet narratives. In March 1921, the sailors of Kronstadt rebelled against the Bolsheviks, demanding freedom of speech and closing of concentration camps, but this belated revolt was ruthlessly suppressed by Leon Trotsky. After the revolution, the Navy's restoration was slow, and only with the beginning of industrialization in 1930 was a large shipbuilding program developed, but not accomplished before the beginning of the Great Patriotic War, the Soviet Union's portion of World War II. As a result, the Soviet Navy during World War II consisted of some old World War I-era ships, some modern pre-war built cruisers and destroyers, and a number of torpedo boats. Unfortunately, much of the Soviet fleet on the Baltic Sea was blocked in Leningrad and Kronstadt by Finnish and German minefields during 1941–1944 and maimed by mines and air attacks. Nevertheless, numerous sorties by attack boats and submarines actions were conducted. On the Black Sea, with the loss of the main naval base, Sevastopol, and effective actions of Axis aviation as well as minefields, the effectiveness of large surface ships was limited. The Northern Fleet, composed mostly of destroyers, played a major role in anti-aircraft and anti-submarine defense of Allied convoys heading to Murmansk. During the Cold War, the Soviets gave their Navy a number of missions. In addition to its role as one of the legs of the nuclear triad, the Navy was supposed to destroy American SSBNs and carrier groups, interdict NATO lines of communications, and assist the ground forces in continental theater offensives. They were quick to equip their surface fleet with missiles of various sorts. In fact, it became a hallmark of Soviet design to place large anti-ship missiles onto relatively small and fast missile boats. The Soviet Navy also possessed several very large guided missile cruisers with great firepower, such as those of the Kirov class and the Slava class cruisers. In the 1980s, the Soviet Navy acquired its first true aircraft carrier, Tbilisi. In some respects, including speed and reactor technology, later Soviet submarines were, and remain, some of the world's best. Their primary shortcomings were insufficient noise damping and sonar technology. The Soviets possessed numerous purpose-built guided missile submarines, such as the Oscar-class submarine, as well as many ballistic missile submarines, such as the Delta-class submarines, and attack submarines, such as the Victor and Akula-class submarines. The Soviet Navy's Typhoon-class ballistic missile boats are the world's largest submarines. The Soviet attack submarine force was, like the rest of the Navy, geared towards the interception of NATO convoys, but also targeted American aircraft carrier battle groups. Modern Russian Navy. The 1991 dissolution of the Soviet Union led to a severe decline in the Russian Navy. Defense expenditures were severely reduced. Many ships were scrapped or laid up as accommodation ships at naval bases, and the building program was essentially stopped. Sergei Gorshkov's build-up during the Soviet period had emphasized ships over support facilities, but Gorshkov had also retained ships in service beyond their effective lifetimes, so a reduction had been inevitable in any event. The situation was exacerbated by the impractical range of vessel types which the Soviet military-industrial complex, with the support of the leadership, had forced on the Navy. Taking modifications into account, the Soviet Navy in the mid-1980s had nearly 250 different classes of ship. The Kiev-class aircraft-carrying cruisers and many other ships were prematurely retired, and the incomplete second Admiral Kosttsov-class aircraft carrier Varyag was eventually sold to the People's Republic of China by Ukraine. Funds were only allocated for the completion of ships ordered prior to the collapse of the USSR, as well as for refits and repairs on fleet ships taken out of service since. However, the construction times for these ships tended to stretch out extensively. In 2003 it was reported that the Akula-class submarine SSO Nerpa had been under construction for 15 years. Storage of decommissioned nuclear submarines in ports near Murmansk became a significant issue, with the Bologna Foundation reporting details of lowered readiness. Naval support bases outside Russia, such as Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam, were gradually closed, with the exception of the modest technical support base in Tartus, Syria to support ships deployed to the Mediterranean. naval aviation declined as well from its height as Soviet naval aviation, dropping from an estimated 60,000 personnel with some 1,100 combat aircraft in 1992 to 35,000 personnel with around 270 combat aircraft in 2006. In 2002, out of 584 naval aviation crews only 156 were combat-ready, and 77 ready for night flying. Average annual flying time was 21.7 hours, compared to 24 hours in 1999. However, since 2002 these figures may have improved. Training and readiness also suffered severely. In 1995, only 2 missile submarines at a time were being maintained on station, from the Northern and Pacific fleets. The decline culminated in the loss of the Oscar II-class Kursk submarine during the Northern Fleet summer exercise that was intended to back up the publication of a new naval doctrine. The exercise was to have culminated with the deployment of the Admiral Kravtsov task group to the Mediterranean. As of 2006, the Russian Navy had 50 nuclear submarines with only 26 operational compared to 170 in 1991. The Navy planned to reduce the number to 20 submarines, including 10 strategic missile submarines and 10 multi-purpose submarines, according to unofficial reports. As of February 2008, the Russian Navy had 44 nuclear submarines with 24 operational. 19 diesel-electric submarines, 16 operational. And 56 first and second-rank surface combatants, 37 operational. Despite this improvement, the November 2008 accident on board the Akula-class submarine attack boat Nurpa during sea trials before lease to India represents a concern for the future. In 2009, Admiral Popov, former commander of the Russian Northern Fleet, said that the Russian Navy would greatly decline in combat capabilities by 2015 if the current rate of new ship construction remained unchanged, due to the retirement of ocean-going ships. In 2012, President Vladimir Putin announced a plan to build 51 modern ships and 24 submarines by 2020. Of the 24 submarines, 16 will be nuclear-powered. On January 10, 2013, the Russian Navy finally accepted its first new Borei-class SSBN for service. A second Borei was undergoing sea trials and entered service in December 21, 2013. A third Borei-class boat was launched and began trials in early 2013, and is expected to be commissioned in 2014. Leadership 1991 to 1992 FADM Krenavin, Vladimir Nikolaevich, 1992 November 1997 FADM Gromov, Felix Nikolaevich, NOV 1997 September 2005 FADM Koroidov, Vladimir Ivanovich, Sep 2005 September 2007 FADM Masurin, Vladimir Vasilyevich, Sep 2007 May 2012 Admiral Vysotsky, Vladimir Sergeyevich, May 2012 Present Admiral Churkov, Viktor Viktorovich. Structure. Since 2012 the headquarters of the Russian Navy is once again located in the Admiralty in St. Petersburg. Russian naval manpower is a mixture of conscripts serving one-year terms and volunteers. In 2006 the IISS assessed there were 142,000 personnel in the Russian Navy. As of 2008 the conscription term was reduced to 1 year and a major downsizing and reorganization were underway. In 2008, plans were announced to move the headquarters to the Admiralty Building in St. Petersburg, the historic location of the headquarters of the Imperial Russian Navy. The Navy staff finally relocated there on November 2012. Naval Infantry. The Russian Naval Infantry are the amphibious force of the Russian Navy and can trace their origins back to 1705, when Peter I issued a decree for an infantry regiment of naval equipage. Since its formation it has seen action in the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War, the Russo-Japanese War, the First and Second World Wars, and the Chechen and Georgian conflicts. Under the leadership of Admiral Gorshkov during the Cold War, the Soviet Navy expanded the reach of the naval infantry and deployed it worldwide on numerous occasions, but since the dissolution of the Soviet Union its role has been greatly reduced. The naval infantry and coastal troops are led by the Deputy Commander for Naval Infantry Commandant of the Naval Infantry of the Russian Navy, Major General Alexander Kolportsenko. Their motto, "Where we are, there is victory." Naval aviation. The first naval aviation units in Russia were formed in 1912–1914 as a part of the Soviet Baltic Fleet and the Soviet Black Sea Fleet. Since its formation, it has participated in the Russian Civil War, World War II and in many other conflicts throughout Europe, the Middle East and Asia. During the Cold War, the naval aviation pursued a policy of deploying large numbers of bombers in maritime strike roles to counter the U.S. Navy's extensive fleet of aircraft carriers. By 1989 it operated over 1,000 fixed-wing aircraft, with the majority being bombers such as the Tu-22M Backfire, and the Tu-16 Badger. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, however, it has been significantly reduced in size. As of 2007, the Russian naval aviation consists of the following components: naval missile-carrying aviation, shore-based ASW aviation, attack aviation, shore-based fighter aviation, reconnaissance aviation, shipborne aviation, auxiliary air units. Equipment, ships and submarines. Military districts and fleets. The Russian Navy consists of 4 fleets and 1 flotilla subordinated to 3 of 4 of the newly formed Joint Operational Strategic Commands. Western Military District, Western Joint Strategic Command, Northern Fleet. The Russian Northern Fleet, established as a modern formation in 1933, is headquartered at Severomorsk and spread around various bases in the Greater Murmansk area. This is the main fleet of the Russian Navy and currently comprises Admiral Kosttsov aircraft carrier or heavy aircraft carrying cruiser Euro 1, Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser, Slava-class cruiser, Udaloy-class destroyer, Udaloy-2-class destroyer, Sovremen-class destroyer, Delta IV-class submarine, Typhoon-class submarine, Oscar-class submarine, Sierra-class submarine, Akula-class submarine, Victor-class submarine, Kilo-class submarine, Bori-class submarine, 1, 2 and sea trials, Yasen-class submarine. The fleet also includes many corvettes, patrol ships, light amphibious ships and support and logistic ships. Baltic Fleet. The Baltic Fleet, established on May 18, 1703, is based in Baltiysk and Kronstadt, with its headquarters in the city of Kaliningrad, Kaliningrad Oblast. The fleet consists of Sovremen-class destroyer, New Strashimy-class frigate, Steregushchi-class corvette, 3, Kilo-class submarine, Lada-class submarine. The Baltic Fleet also includes many corvettes, patrol ships, minnow hunters, light amphibious ships and support vessels. Southern Military District, Southern Joint Strategic Command, the Black Sea Fleet. The Black Sea Fleet, established on May 2, 1783 and is based at the Sevastopol, Krantinaya, and Strelitskaya bays in Sevastopol, which is also the location of its headquarters, and at Novorossiysk and Krasnodar-Krai. The fleet also has various other facilities on the Crimean Peninsula and facilities in Krasnodar-Krai. The fleet consists of Slava-class cruiser, Kara-class cruiser, Kashin-class destroyer, Urivostnoy-class frigate, Kilo-class submarine. The fleet also includes a small number of corvettes, patrol and coastal protection ships, light amphibious ships, and support vessels. Caspian Flotilla. The Caspian Flotilla, established on November 4, 1722, is based in Astrakhan and Makhachkala with its headquarters in Astrakhan. The fleet consists of Tatarstan Gepard-class frigate. The fleet also includes a 4 artillery and 3 rocket corvettes and some patrol ships. Eastern Military District, Eastern Joint Strategic Command, Pacific Fleet. The Pacific Fleet, established on May 10, 1731 and is headquartered in Vladivostok and based around Vladivostok and Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. The fleet consists of Kirov-class battler cruiser, in conservation, Slava-class cruiser, Sovremen-class destroyer, Udaloy-class destroyer, Delta III-class submarine, Oscar-class submarine, Akula-class submarine, Kilo-class submarine. The Pacific Fleet also includes coastal combatants such as corvettes, patrol ships, mine warfare ships, light amphibious ships, and support vessels. There are also naval aviation and coastal troops and naval infantry components. Future and modernization. The recent improvement in the Russian economy has led to a significant rise in defense expenditure and an increase in numbers of ships under construction, focusing on submarines, such as the conventional Petersburg class and nuclear Severodvinsk class. Some older ships have been refitted as well. Jane's Fighting Ships commented in 2004 that the construction program was too focused on Cold War scenarios, given the submarine emphasis. The Starogushki-class corvettes, the lead ship of which was laid down on December 21, 2001, is the first new surface construction since the collapse of the Soviet Union, while the new Admiral Sergei Gorshkov-class frigates marks the first attempt of the Navy to return to the construction of large blue water-capable vessels. Additionally, the Russian Navy also has plans to procure a new class of destroyer, the Project 21956. On April 28, 2010, the Ukrainian parliament ratified an agreement to extend Russia's lease of Crimean base facilities to 2042 with an option for 5 more years, through 2047. Subsequent to the recent Russian annexation of Crimea, this agreement has been officially invalidated by the Russian Federation State Duma. The Russian Navy has also revealed that Russia's Black Sea Fleet will receive 30 new ships by 2020 and will become self-sufficient with its own infrastructure in the Crimean Peninsula. The fleet will be updated with new warships, submarines, and auxiliary vessels within the next 6 years. The new ships being built for the Black Sea Fleet include 6 Admiral Grigorovich-class frigates and 6 Varshavenka-class diesel-electric submarines. Deployments and increase in activity. In the last years of the 1990s, naval activity was very low. Even at the height of the Kosovo War crisis, a planned task group deployment to the Mediterranean was reduced to the dispatch of the intelligence ship Lehman. 2003 saw a major increase in activity, including several major exercises. A May joint exercise with the Indian Navy saw 2 Pacific Fleet destroyers and 4 vessels from the Black Sea Fleet, led by the Slava-class cruiser Moskva, deployed for 3 months into the Indian Ocean. The largest out-of-area deployment for a decade, the INDRA 2003 exercise, was highlighted by a series of missile launches by 2 160s and 4 95s, which made a 5,400-mile round-trip flight from Engels Air Base near Saratov to the exercise area. In August 2003, the Navy also participated in the Far Eastern exercise Vostok 2003, which saw the Slava-class cruiser Varyag and the Sovremen-class destroyer Byty active, as well as an amphibious landing carried out by 3 Pacific Fleet Rapucha-class LSTs. Warships and helicopters from the Japanese and South Korean navies also took part. The Northern Fleet followed in January 2004 when 13 ships and 7 submarines took part in exercises in the Barents Sea. The involvement of Admiral Kosttsov and Kirov-class battler-cruiser nuclear-powered cruiser Petrovskaya was overshadowed however by 2 ballistic missile launch failures, made more embarrassing because President Vladimir Putin was afloat aboard the Typhoon-class SSBN Arkhangelsk to witness the tests. Neither of the Delta IV-class Novomoskovsk nor Karelia were able to successfully launch what were apparently RSM-54S LBMs. Former Navy Commander-in-Chief Vladimir Kuroyedov's early dismissal may have resulted from these gaffes. He was replaced by Admiral Vladimir Masorin in September 2005. Embarrassment for the Navy had continued, with a mine accident during rehearsals for the Baltic Fleet's celebration of Navy Day in St. Petersburg in July 2005 and the Pros-class mini-submarine AS-28 having to be rescued by a joint British-US effort using a Royal Navy unmanned submersible in the Far East in early August 2005. However, exercises and operations continued. Peace Mission 2005 in August 2005 involved a new level of cooperation between Russia and the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. 2 months later, the Slava-class cruiser Varyag led Russian participation in INDRA 2005, held off Vishakhapatnam between 14th and 20th October 2005. It included surface firings, air defense, and anti-submarine warfare exercises. Admiral Vladimir Vysotsky became Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy on September 11, 2007, having moved up from the Northern Fleet, which he had commanded since September 2005. On October 16, 2008, the Speaker of Russia's upper house of parliament did not preclude Russia asking for a resumption of a naval presence in Yemen. Authorities in the Middle East country had been calling on Moscow to help fight piracy and possible terrorist threats. The USSR had a major naval support base on Socotra Island of the former socialist state of South Yemen, which merged with North Yemen in 1990 to form the present-day Yemen. Speaking to journalists in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, Federation Council Speaker Sergei Mironov said the new direction of Russia's foreign and defense policies and an increase in its naval missions would be taken into consideration when making a decision on the request. It's possible that the aspects of using Yemen ports not only for visits by Russian warships, but also for more strategic goals will be considered, he said. Mironov also said a visit to Russia by the President of Yemen, Ali Abdullah Saleh, could take place in the near future and that the issue of military technical cooperation could be raised during his visit. Security Council Chief Nikolai Patrushev said on August 6, 2012 that Russia will build a string of naval bases along its northern coast and the Arctic zone to serve as resupply bases for Russian warships and border guard vessels. Western Atlantic and U.S. Eastern Seaboard. In August 2009, the news media reported that two Akula-class submarines operated off the east coast of the United States, with one of the submarines being identified as a Project 971 Shkuka-B type. U.S. military sources noted that this was first known Russian submarine deployment to the Western Atlantic since the end of the Cold War, raising concerns within U.S. military and intelligence communities. The U.S. Northern Command confirmed that this 2009 Akula-class submarine deployment did occur. In August 2012, the news media reported that another Akula-class submarine operated in the Gulf of Mexico purportedly undetected for over a month, sparking controversy within U.S. military and political circles, with U.S. Senator John Cornyn of the Senate Armed Services Committee demanding details of this deployment from Admiral Jonathan W. Greenert, the Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Greenert stated that no Russian submarine had operated in the Gulf of Mexico, North Atlantic and Mediterranean Sea. In February 2008, a Russian naval task force completed a 2-month deployment in the Mediterranean Sea and the North Atlantic which started on December 4, 2007. The operation was the first large-scale Russian Navy deployment to the Atlantic and the Mediterranean in 15 years. The task force included the Kustuzov-class aircraft carrier Kustuzov, the Udaloy-class destroyers Admiral Levchenko and Admiral Chabanenko, and the Slava-class guided missile cruiser Moskva, as well as auxiliary vessels. During the operation the Navy practiced rescue and counter-terror operations, reconnaissance, and missile and bomb strikes on the enemy's naval task force. Over 40 Russian Air Force aircraft took part in joint exercises with the Navy as well. Vice Admiral Nikolai Maximov, the Northern Fleet commander, said during the operations that the deployment was aimed at ensuring Russia's naval presence in key operational areas of the world's oceans, and establishing conditions for secure Russian maritime navigation. After this visit to the Mediterranean and France, the first in 15 years, we will establish a permanent presence in the region, he said. Admiral Vladimir Vysotsky summed up the results in February saying, "What is important is that we have appeared in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean at a scheduled time and not just that we appeared there. We'll do all we can to build up our presence where Russia has strategic interests," adding that Russia intended to carry out similar missions once every 6 months. In October 2008, a naval task group from the Northern Fleet, comprising the nuclear-powered missile cruiser Pyotr, the large ASW ship Admiral Chabanenko, and support ships, left their home port of Severomorsk in northern Russia on September 22 and is currently in the northern Atlantic, having covered a distance of 1,000 nautical miles in a week. Having some spare time before a joint exercise with the Venezuelan Navy, which is planned for November 2008, the warships will perform a number of tasks in the Mediterranean Sea and visit several Mediterranean ports, including Tripoli, the Navy's press service said in a statement. Russian warships are scheduled to participate in joint naval exercises with the Venezuelan Navy in the Caribbean on November 10. 14, in line with the 2008 training program, and in order to expand military cooperation with foreign navies. These exercises actually took place on December 1. October 11, 2008, Russian warships bound for Venezuela, including the nuclear-powered cruiser Puerto Veliki, put in Saturday at the Libyan port of Tripoli for resupply. From Venezuela the Peter Veliki proceeded to a port called in Cape Town, South Africa, then participated in the INDRA 2009 exercise off western India, briefly engaged in counter-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden, and returned to its home port of Severomorsk in March 2009. A group of Pacific Fleet ships arrived in the Mediterranean Sea on May 15, 2013, having sailed from Vladivostok on March 19, 2013. The Udaloy-class destroyer Admiral Pantalayev, the Rapucha-class landing ships Pazvik and Admiral Nevelskoy, the Pishenga tanker and the Fotyi Krylov rescue tug will augment the Russian Navy's grouping there, and will carrying out tasks in the Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea. The Pacific Fleet ships will practice activities jointly with forces from other Russian Navy fleets and make a number of business calls at ports in the region, including a call at Limassol, Cyprus, on May 17-13. The Baltic Fleet Rapucha-class landing ships Kaliningrad, Alexandr-Shabalin and Atsev arrived at Novorossiysk Naval Base on May 14-13, having completed their duties in the Mediterranean. The Baltic Fleet ships will spend several weeks at Novorossiysk undergoing checks and maintenance and replenishing supplies before resuming their duties in the Mediterranean. The Northern Fleet's Udaloy-class destroyer Vice Admiral Kulikov was reported to be heading for the Atlantic on May 20-13 after completing a visit to Norway. The ship had been taking part in the Russian-Norwegian VMF 2013 exercise and is expected to take on supplies from the tanker Vyazma while at anchor in the North Sea before undertaking a lengthy voyage in the northeastern regions of the Atlantic Ocean. On June 1, 2013, Navy Commander Admiral Viktor Churkov said that the Admiral Kosttsov aircraft carrier is expected to put out and perform a number of missions in an offshore oceanic zone as part of a group. Northern Fleet naval pilots will perform a number of missions on board this cruiser during the long-range mission. He also stated that the ship's deployment might be as part of a permanent operational group in the Mediterranean. In preparing for the deployment, the ship's air wing would not be using the NITKA pilot training facility located in Ukraine. Syria. In September 2008, it was reported that Russia and Syria conducted talks about permitting Russia to develop and enlarge its Russian naval base in Syria in order to establish a stronger naval presence in the Mediterranean, and amidst the deteriorating Russia relations with the West in conjunction with the 2008 South Ossetia War and the plans to deploy U.S. missile defense shield in Poland, it has even been asserted that President Assad has agreed to Tartus port a unregistered trademark S conversion into a permanent Middle East base for Russia unregistered trademark S nuclear-armed warships. Moscow and Damascus additionally announced that it would be renovating the port, although there was no mention in the Syrian press. On September 22, 2008, Russian Navy spokesman Igor Digalo said the nuclear-powered Peter the Great cruiser, accompanied by 3 other ships, sailed from the Northern Fleet's base of Severomorsk. The ships will cover about 15,000 nautical miles to conduct joint maneuvers with the Venezuelan Navy. Digalo refused to comment on Monday's report in the Daily Izvestia claiming that the ships were to make a stopover in the Syrian port of Tartus on their way to Venezuela. Russian officials said the Soviet-era base there was being renovated to serve as a foothold for a permanent Russian Navy presence in the Mediterranean. In late November 2011, Pravda and Reuters wrote that a naval flotilla led by the aircraft carrier Kosttsov would sail to its naval base in Tartus as a show of support for the al-Assad regime. Such a visit is not possible because the lengths of all of Russia's current modern warships exceed the size of the 2 100-meter piers located at the Russian leasehold in Tartus. On November 29, 2011, Army General Nikolai Makarov, chief of the Russian General Staff, said that sending ships of the Russian Navy to the Mediterranean Sea is linked to exercises and not to the situation in Syria. In the event of necessity, namely to carry out repairs, to take water and food on board and to allow rest for the crews, Russian ships may visit Tartus, but in this case this has not been included in the plan of the trip. the Interfax source said. He also noted that the size of Admiral Kostov does not allow it to mirror in Tartus because the port does not have suitable infrastructure that is large enough mirroring. Caribbean Sea. On September 8, 2008, it was announced that the Piotr Velikiy would sail to the Caribbean Sea in order to participate in naval exercises with the Venezuelan Navy. This action would represent the first major Russian show of force in that sea since the end of the Cold War. On September 22 the Kirov-class nuclear missile cruiser Petr Velikiy and the Udaloy-class large anti-submarine ship Admiral Chabanenko, accompanied by support vessels, left their home port of Voyenno-morskoy for naval exercises with Venezuela scheduled for early November 2008. On November 25, 2008, a group of warships from Russia's Northern Fleet arrived at the Venezuelan port of La Guaira. The Udaloy-class destroyer Admiral Chabanenko has docked in port, while the Piotr Velikiy missile cruiser has dropped anchor off La Guaira, said Capt. First Rank Igor Digalo. It was reported on May 13, 2013 that the Russian Navy is planning a foray into the Atlantic and as far as Latin America during the summer. Navy Deputy Commander-in-Chief Vice Admiral Alexander Fedotenkov stated that ships of the Black Sea Fleet, led by the Slava-class cruiser Moskva, will join vessels from the Baltic and Northern Fleets in conducting training in the Atlantic, including visits to unidentified Latin American ports. The deployment is planned for late summer to early autumn and will be completed in October. East Africa, Somali coast. On September 24, 2008, the Russian new Strashimy left its home base at Baltiysk, Kaliningrad Oblast, Russia, for counter-piracy operations near the Somali coast, said Russian Navy spokesman Captain First Rank Igor Digalo. On November 19, 2008, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy Admiral Vysotsky, speaking to the official news agency, RIA Novosti, stated that the Russian Navy would send additional vessels to the area. From January 11 through March 17, 2009, the Admiral Vinogradov took up the counter-piracy mission from the new Strashimy and upon completion took a course home to Vladivostok by way of a port visit to Jakarta, Indonesia 24 March 28, 2009. From April 26 through June 7, 2009, the Pacific Fleet destroyer Admiral Pantalayev took up counter-piracy duties in the Gulf of Aden, having left Vladivostok at the end of March 2009 to relieve the Admiral Vinogradov. It returned to Vladivostok on July 1. On June 29, 2009, the Pacific Fleet destroyer Admiral Tributz was preparing to depart Vladivostok to relieve Admiral Pantalayev for counter-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden. Depending on the situation, the deployment could last from 2 to 6 months. Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea. On January 11, 2009, Army General Makarov, Chief of the Russian General Staff, announced that the Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser Petr Velikiy and 5 other ships would take part in exercises with the Indian Navy in late January 2009. See also, Future of the Russian Navy, List of ships of the Line of Russia, List of aircraft carriers of Russia and the Soviet Union, List of Russian Navy cruisers, List of Russian Navy equipment, List of ships of Russia by project number, List of Soviet and Russian submarine classes, List of current Russian Navy ships for current order of battle of the Russian Navy, Russian torpedoes, references and sources. Further reading, Reuben Johnson, Russian Navy faces irreversible collapse, Jane's Defense Weekly, July 15, 2009, and link to original Russian article at with currency n florin th 1 quarter n euro th micron n th squared th plus or minus th paragraph th degree th to the first n th micron th cubed th 3 quarters th n. NVONG RU. Retrieved on September 9, 2010. Russia will not build aircraft carriers till 2010. RIA Novosti. May 16, 2005, see also, List of Russian admirals, List of Russian naval engineers, List of Russian military accidents, List of Russian military bases abroad, Ministry of Defense, Military History of the Russian Federation, Awards and Decorations of the Russian Federation, Awards and Emblems of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, Honorary Titles of the Russian Federation, External links, Commerçant Flast, translation of the entire Russian fleet, 2008, Russian Navy, lists of Russian naval vessels. This site has not been updated since 2003. Russian Navy weapons, ships of Russia, Russian Navy history, a brief guide to the Russian Navy, video, Russia Euro unregistered trademark S Naval Task Force exercises in the Atlantic. Official website of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation in Russian, English, Russian Navy 2011, complete ship list.